The plot diagram is an organizational tool used to map the events of a story. These events are organized into 6 different categories depending on when they occur and what effect they have on the story as a whole. The plot is the sequence of events that form a story. These events drive the motion of the plot by moving the story along from the beginning to the end. To illustrate the workings of the plot diagram, we will be examining the events of Carl Hiaasen's novel Hoot. And as we walk through the different parts of the plot diagram, I'll be giving you questions you can ask yourself to further understand the events of the plot. And you can ask yourself these questions whenever you're reading, and they will serve you as a guide. The exposition is the introduction. This is when the reader learns about the various aspects of the story. While you're reading, you can ask yourself, what information does the writer give me at the beginning of the story? As soon as you crack open the book, you can spot clues about the setting, the characters, and even the signs of conflicts. In Hoot, we find that the setting is Coconut Cove, Florida, and the characters are Roy, Beatrice, and Mullerfingers. The rising action is made up of events that lead up to the climax. You can ask yourself, which events of the rising action drew me in most as a reader? When did I feel the most suspenseful? In Hoot, this is when Roy discovers the burrow owl's habitat. During the conflict, multiple struggles take place, and there are 2 different types of conflicts. The internal conflict, which happens within the protagonist's mind, as well as the external conflict, protagonist versus the antagonist. You can ask yourself, who is opposing who? And what is at stake in each conflict? In Hoot, we have an internal conflict. This is when Roy experiences difficulties in adapting to his new neighborhood in Coconut Cove, because it is so different from his former hometown in Montana. And we also have an external conflict. The corrupt owners of a pancake house plan to destroy the natural habitats of local burrow owls so they can build over it. The climax is the most action-packed part of the story. This is when the protagonist faces a major conflict. It's also the turning point of the story. And you can ask yourself, what is the major conflict? Can I predict the effects that this conflict might have on the protagonist as well as the antagonist? In Hoot, this is when Roy, Beatrice, and Mullerfingers, along with a group of their fellow classmates, stand up to the owners of the pancake house in order to protect the burrow owls. The falling action is the aftermath of the climax. How is this part of the story different from the first, you can ask yourself. Also, how have the characters evolved or changed since I first met them? In Hoot, the falling action takes place when a newspaper reporter arrives at Roy's house and interviews him about his struggle against the pancake house. The resolution is the conclusion of the story. You can ask yourself, how are the conflicts of this story resolved? How does this ending make me feel? Am I satisfied with the ending? And if I were the author, what would I have changed? In Hoot, because the truth was revealed about the company's intent to build within the burrow owl's environment, the company is forced to retreat. Also, Roy becomes comfortable with his new life and his new friends in Coconut Cove. The plot diagram is an important tool to help you keep track of the events of the story. Asking yourself questions along the way will help you to understand the individual events of the plot, as well as how they impact the story as a whole.